Welcome to the Predictable Revenue Podcast, where sales leaders teach you what's working for them so you can build it yourself. Feeling ready to kick your sales into high gear? We're here to help. Check out our sales coaching and consulting services at predictablerevenue.com. Angelo, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
I'm excited to talk about Playably. I want to get started with, where did the idea come from?
Yeah, so before we started Playably, about 5 years ago, my co-founder and I started a company called Valtris. So our background is we came from Unity, which is a game engine. We were running the data and analytics team there. When we first started Valtris, the product that we had originally built was for game developers. It's a product that was sunset at Unity. And then we thought, hey, this thing had legs at Unity, let's build it. So then we built it, we went to game developers, and we were building something that was a vitamin, not a painkiller. And so that was our first product that we launched to market. We did a couple of pivots, and then right when Gen AI was booming and everyone was using ChatGPT, we pivoted to AI. So we launched a company called Shop Landing AI, which was a AI-generated landing pages with the idea that based off of the campaign and the traffic that was coming to your website, we could personalize the landing page to have it very tight and very specific to the persona that you were targeting. So we did that for about a year, and then how we came to Playably was that we were at our conference. We tried conferences that we'd never done it before. So we went to a conference in New York called Commerce Next, and we ran the startup booth. Our booth was Shop Landing AI, and then we provide gamification. And at that time, our gamification was we had a quiz as part of the AI landing pages. And then we had a lot of people come to our booth specifically seeking us out because your gamification, show me your games. At that time, we just had quizzes and landing pages. But if they said we want games, I'm like, you want games? We can give you games. We came from gaming. So we didn't intentionally, we started with game developers and our background has been in gaming, but it never occurred to us to kind of lean into gamification for e-commerce. So it wasn't until we had a customers that we wanted to work with come up to us and tell us, hey, we want games, that we decided to pivot to Playably.
Interesting. And so you had, give me a rough idea of the revenue where you were. It doesn't have to be precise, but just did you have a few customers, a bunch of customers?
So when we were doing Shop Landing, the landing pages, we had less than 20 customers and we were under $500,000 ARR. So we had the issues that we had with Shop Landing was that there was just, when we were building out the landing pages, there was a lot of back and forth between, so we mostly work with direct-to-consumer brands on Shopify. And there was a lot of back and forth, and it just took us a long time to get the pages live because there were so many edits from the client. I think part of that is that people perceive that the owners are used to, they can build the landing pages themselves. So oftentimes they would insert themselves. And even though we were the experts, they would always be a lot of pushback. So it took a while, the time to launch was just too long. And also when we were launching, we would A/B test our pages. And so hands down, our pages always had higher engagement, lower bounce rates, and higher time on site. But the conversion rates, we didn't beat the product page, and we had trouble convincing it because product page is a different stage of the customer journey. But we'd always get compared against the product page. And so there was, how do I say this? Even though our pages were engaging better, the brands that we were working with, they were very, focused on the conversion rates. And when they compared our landing pages against conversion rate, they were looking for more of a quick win. And what we were trying to build was if you have a sustainable landing pages that have higher engagement, conversions will come. But they wanted to see a quick win within a month or two.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And so you've got more than a handful of customers, arguably two handfuls of customers, a significant amount of revenue. You're at a conference and people come up to you and they say games and you're like, let's pivot.
Yeah.
How did you go from that moment at the conference to kind of validating the idea? Was that enough validation for you? Did you immediately start building it, or did you do anything else to?
Yeah. So what we had when we were doing Shop Landing, we had landing pages, and then we were kind of dabbing our feet into quizzes. So quizzes, we started to build more interactivity into the landing pages, and we saw a lot of good results there. And so we were actually planning on kind of doubling down on quizzes. And then when the feedback came back that, you actually want games, I think for us it's kind of serendipitous because we happen to have the team that could build games. My co-founder and I, we came from Unity, the founding teams from Unity. We have experience in mobile games. My co-founder, before his first startup was called Playnomics, and it was all focused on behavioral analytics for mobile games. He sold that to Unity. So we had the expertise to figure out, how to instrument the games to collect the data that the brand wants. And we also have a game designer, so who has built games as part of her career working in museums. And so we just had to have the team, and it kind of feels like we were uh, inadvertently assembling the Avengers, and then all of a sudden people like, we want games. Like we happen to be the team that could do it. So I think there was the piece of it where like we had the team and we had the expertise that we could do this thing, and we were excited about it. And we had seen some traction with the quizzes, and so it felt like we could move some of these people who had quizzes over to some of the games, and so that's what we did. Moving some of the existing customers over who were building landing pages for, like, hey, we pivoted to games. We would love to replace, that crappy spinner you have with one of our games, and so that's where we started.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And so your first customers, did they come from that conference?
The first customers were actually customers that we had on Shop Landing AI, and then we were able to migrate a couple of them over onto Playably. And so for them, we started with the customers that we had really good engagement with on the quizzes. And so the quizzes were, when we think about, where we are at Playably and where we were at Shop Landing, it was just, we were able to get people on the website and we were able to get them to stay longer. And now with the quizzes, we were able to get them to interact. And it's so hard to get people to do anything. So like a fun quiz got people to do something, if we could take the next level, a fun game that feels branded and is very, bespoke and speaks to that audience, if we could get higher engagement there, and we've seen it since we made the move to games, that like people are a lot more engaged, people are more likely to give you your email address. And if there's a reward or an offer tied to the game, people are more likely to redeem that just because they feel like they've earned it.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's that, I think we talked about this in the pre-interview. It's kind of that near aisles hooked principle.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of like behavioral economics and a lot of like, behavior in games about, we talk a lot with brands, and the big pain point that keeps coming up is they're spending a lot on Facebook and on Google to get traffic to their website, and then it's bouncing. And so what we think about is like, if you only have 8 seconds to get someone's attention, what's going to get their attention? Like a welcome pop-up that's like, the first thing they see, or some fun interactive game that is engaging. And so we think about like, how can we get that attention? And we feel like games are a great way to keep that attention, because if you can get them to engage and stay longer on the site, engagement and retention are always precursors to conversions. We saw it in gaming, and we see it. We saw it in gaming, and then we see it with the brands that we're working with on Playably.
And not everybody's going to have the kind of cash and bankroll to be, at a conference to try and validate product market fit. Is that something that, looking back, would you do that again?
Looking back, how we got when we were about and we were at Shop Landing, the primary marketing channel that we were doing, we didn't do any paid media, but we did do cold email outreach. And so that's kind of like, it's a little bit of a spray and pray. We were working with a couple different agencies. And so we did get customers through that, but you're never going to get like a big enterprise company through just through cold email. And so I
might disagree with you there.
Okay. Oh, well, if you could help us get it, we'd be down. But the way that we did it, and the agency partners that we worked with, we were able to get like, huge deals from that. And so the conference was helpful. We signed up as a startup booth. And I think what was helpful for us was that our value prop stood out. Since then, we've kind of really used conferences as a way to meet with our ICP. And what's been helpful for us is that most of these conferences, we're the only ones building games. And so it's easy for us to stand out. Like our booth, we have people like, hey, do you want to play a game? And then we have them play the game. So for that sense, conferences has been really good for us in terms of being able to get in front of our ICP. And it was kind of nice for them to tell us like, oh, this is something that they wanted. So right after that first conference, we did another conference, and we didn't really have any games yet. So we were still kind of like fleshing out the idea. And then most recently, we were at NRF. And so we had a bunch of games, and kind of like looking at our evolution from when we started to where we ended in 6 months. And our conference game has gone up, no pun intended, I guess. Our conference game has gone up so much in terms of our ability to show a real product, and people get it, they see the game, and we know we have something novel and unique. And what's been nice is I think we've had about like 20 follow-up calls from that conference. And so if we can close, 25% of them, that conference pays for itself. Yeah.
So first customers for Playably came from a conference, and I guess you had some pre-existing customers. First kind of net new ones, your source was conference, not cold email. And then your next customers, those have been coming from conferences as well?
Those have been coming from conferences as well. I think what we've been doing is, now that we're basically rewarming the leads that we had met and that showed interest in that conference, in the first conference 6 months ago. What's been helpful is that people like the idea. Yeah, I know, it's great. People like the idea. And the hesitation has always been, we're kind of introducing a new concept of gamification. talk with a lot of brands, and when they think of gamification for e-com, they think of the spinner. And there's a tension between, like, if you talk to the person in charge of a website loves the spinner because it gets conversions and it gets sales. And then the creative director hates the spinner because they think it's tacky and it kind of cheapens the brand. It's a spinner, yeah. But what we do is we kind of bridge the two. We're like, we can build you a bespoke experience that feels very much like it's intent. It feels like the brand put effort and thought into it. It's not like a throwaway experience. It's kind of like a surprise and delight factor for the customers, but it also gets them to get the conversions, it gets the increased engagement and the retention. All that to say is that now that we have more examples, we're selling ahead as most startups do. And now that we have a couple solid examples and now we have more games live, I think it's one of those things that as we start to have more examples live and have more games out there, my hope is that we'll start to generate more inbound leads for us.
Gotcha. So existing customer base kind of came from, did the existing customers come from conferences, or was there some from cold?
The existing customer base was all cold and like friends of friends. So it was within our network, but mostly cold email outreach.
Gotcha.
And then since then, we've been kind of focused on the conferences and then going to more in-person events in New York. So I live in New York. There's a lot of direct-to-consumer meetups. I think we shied away from it before because we didn't have a product yet. Like we had the landing pages, but like it's hard to show that. And then I just got back from conference yesterday and I showed them the game and everyone's like, oh, I get it. So I said, hey, we're was like, what do you do? Like shoppable games. Like, what's that? Like, let me show you. And then they play the game and like, oh, it's really cool. So we finally have that product. And so I feel like that encourages me because I would go to these meetups and I'm like, I build landing pages, but you can't really what is that? You can't really tell. Here, it's like, it's of all the things I've had to solve and like, the many pivots of our company, this has been the most fun. I'm having a lot of fun selling it.
That's awesome. And it's great that you can kind of present the aha moment right there. With the landing page, the aha moment comes later at higher conversion rates. So you can look at it in a chart. It's less exciting. It's less sexy. When you're showing a game, it's like, hey, here's the fun part.
Yeah. We show them the game, they engage with it, and then they play it. And I'm like, you know how hard it is to get anyone to do anything these days. The fact that you play the game, you had fun, and then we're able to get people to do that. It's like, it's kind of, and it's where attention is like the scarcest thing. The fact that we feel like we're close to unlocking something. And so that's the most excited of the whole team has ever been in the years that we've been together. So
that's really exciting. Yeah. Last question for you. Describe the moment and the feeling the first time you realized you might have product market fit or some form of it.
Yeah, I was at, so Sam from Yapo, every month she hosts these it's called e-commerce coffee collective. So it's a bunch of like e-commerce brands and service providers. And then it's like a coffee happy hour in New York, in NoHo area. And so I go to them once a month and it's just great to like catch up with people. And then when I finally had a game, I showed someone like, oh, here's the game. We had just built out. This was around, I think it was December. And then she was a vendor and her mouth just dropped. She's like, when I showed landing pages, when I showed all the other things that we had built, no one's mouth ever dropped, but the way that her mouth dropped and she was playing the game and she was happy. It's kind of weird. Like our product makes people happy. And I guess when I worked at Unity, I mean, you could argue games didn't make people happy, but this is the first time we're like the person using it. I mean, the end customer, we know they love it because we get feedback from like the brands that like, oh man, people reach me on Instagram and they really love this game. So I think it's super cool. But to see it in like real life, to see people like have that like aha moment, like, oh, this is really cool, has been kind of like, I guess, a marker of like, maybe we are up to something.
That's really awesome. It's that feeling where there's an emotional reaction.
Yeah, there's an emotional reaction. And then, I mean, I've done conferences before and I've had to like, I'm like excited. I would love to go to all these events and just be like, oh, Angelo's the games guy. Like, yeah, I just want to be the games guy. That's what I'd be totally happy if like my whole rest of my career, I'm just known as like the person who made online shopping fun again, which is our slogan.
Cool. You should get like I don't know, maybe the flexible LED screens aren't quite cheap enough yet, but I'm like flexible LED t-shirt with your game running would be.
Yeah, we would have it. And then we could have, one of the things we thought for a conference, because we had a lot of people play, is if we had a leaderboard. So then we could have like a raffle. So we could gamify the whole conference experience, right? Where it's like, hey, play our game, get your leaderboard, top 10, you get entered to raffle to win a free game or something. So
that's awesome. I mean, even as a conference, something to attract people to the booth. It's like, hey, come play a game. There's a pretty cool get. It's a pretty cool game. Everybody else is handing out swag, and you're like, hey, this is not only is this a fun little game, but it's the product.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We always get, this is like our third conference that we exhibited at. And then it happened to be the case, like we're always in the startup area. So like sometimes we're neighbors with the same people, and they're always like, you guys always have the most packed booth. It's like, because, this is way more fun than an ERP system.
Totally. Yeah. One of our best years at a conference was because we were right next to Brex, right when they were just taking off. And they had this amazing magician there. And he was like the greatest. I'm using my hands, but he was doing sleight of hand tricks and all these like real magic tricks. And it was amazing. And we just kind of like our team spent most of the time standing at their booth, but then we turned around and be like, hey, we're over here. Do you want to have a chat? And they brought a ton of people to our booth, which was fantastic.
Nice.
If people are curious, want to learn more, want to reach out, ask you a question, or find more about Playably, what's the best way for them to check it out?
So our website is playably.ai. You could also feel free to reach out to me. I'm Angelo at playably.ai. And then I'm also try to be active on LinkedIn, so I'd love to connect with you. It's just Angelo Ferro.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I'll throw a link to your LinkedIn in the show notes here. And so if anybody's curious, they can hit up both of those links right there.
Awesome.
Angelo, thanks so much for coming on and sharing.
All right. Thank you, Colin.